Welcome to Lex's World, everybody, and my deep dive on legalization for new cannabis businesses. This will be a Canadian-leaning, entrepreneur-oriented dive about dealing with regulators and cannabis laws when you're just starting out. Bit different from the video I did explaining the Canadian legalization law for individuals and personal use growers. But don't go away if you're not Canadian, because many tips will be relevant, not just to Canadian cannabis entrepreneurs, but to everyone, even those who don't have a legal recreational weed structure in their area just yet. And I'm going to be speaking not just as an expert in the field of cannabis, but as a former liquor inspector with 8 years of experience dealing with small businesses in the regulatory field. Except I'm going to tell you frankly what the current regulators may not want to say. So, I predict now that Canada and Uruguay have led the way on national levels, and states like Colorado, Oregon, and California have led on the US state level. The entire world will get hit with tons of new legalization acts over the next 5 to 10 years. If you're lucky enough to be in one of those areas affected, like Canada, and hoping to open up a business, step number 1 will be to read your legalization legislation front to back. This will usually be your national level or state level legalization document. In Canada, that would mean you read the Canada Cannabis Act. I'll link to the full text in the description of this video. And you gotta get cozy with it. Print it off. Read it with a highlighter, twice. It's going to contain tons of useful but fairly broad information, like the general parts of the industry being legalized for private businesses, or whether you have to be registered with the government in order to work as a brand agent in the cannabis industry. It'll also likely help you figure out whether your business idea is even legal. Most first-time readers of this Canadian Act, for example, may be disappointed to find out that for at least the first year, it totally excludes legalizing retail sale of edibles, and it places unnecessary and problematic restrictions on cannabis seeds. After reading the broader act, your next step will be to get in touch with your local municipal or county government. Regardless of the federal or provincial or state regulations in your area, you will actually face some really important scrutiny locally, especially if you plan a brick-and-mortar business, like a commercial grow or dispensary, an edibles manufacturing facility, a cannabis lounge, a concentrate manufacturing facility, a cannabis industry training school, and so on. Municipalities already have track records of placing additional restrictions and higher than normal business license fees on what they deem to be sin businesses. Liquor stores, erotic massage parlors, casinos, strip clubs, that sort of thing. My advice is to lobby hard and consistently against artificially inflated license fees. They can be brought up as an issue with your city councilors, although it's pointless to complain to frontline licensing bureaucrats. Find out when your council meetings happen and attend them. There are many sound arguments that work on overzealous municipal regulators, politicians, and bylaw enforcement. The best argument to put forward, in my opinion, goes, hey, cannabis is an intoxicant like liquor, but it's less dangerous than liquor for people's health, and it causes police a whole lot less trouble than liquor. So how can your license fees or restrictions on a dispensary rightfully be any higher than those placed on a liquor store, right? That all said, don't lie to municipalities about the nature of your cannabis business. My advice is to be pretty upfront with your local municipal regulators regarding that. They are the locals. They'll find out exactly what you're doing, and fairly early. Plus, these are the guys who will often handle the local community complaints against your business, which you can look forward to, and municipalities often have the broadest and most consequential power over you, especially in terms of issuing large and repeated fines for bylaw violations. Also, in many places, municipalities have already enacted zoning restrictions on cannabis businesses before any of them have even opened yet, like you can't have a dispensary within 200 meters of a school. And so far, several conservative municipalities have already proposed restricting cannabis businesses from opening in their community at all. A completely pointless endeavor in my view, since online purchasing will be available no matter what and no matter where you are. So if a municipality is doing that, it's just costing local jobs and nothing else. Do municipalities love or hate local jobs? I forget. Anyway, these types of municipal restrictions are why a lot of commercial cannabis growers and other businesses are flocking to very small towns and rural areas whenever it's practical for their business. It's a decision that greatly reduces their regulatory burden. Okay, so moving on from municipalities. After you've figured out the Act and your municipal business regulations, next you have to learn about higher level government agencies that are issuing the cannabis licenses and those agencies' policies. These policies will often be on top of the general rules that are written in the national acts. Who are these agencies? In Canada, the job has been given to the provincial liquor control boards. Some other jurisdictions outside of Canada have created specialized cannabis commissions instead. Get a hold of your overseeing commission's number, make a contact there, and don't be afraid to call them for questions. Also, be prepared to spend 8 to 12 weeks in the application process at minimum, especially in the early days of legalization. Don't call these agencies the week before you need a cannabis retail license, expecting that you're going to get one right away. The power of these boards and commissions is significant, and depending on where you live, opening your business under one board versus another board actually means big differences. They regulate the minor rules which govern establishment operations and customer sales day to day. They can even set provincial taxes on cannabis, monopolize retail sales, or monopolize the distribution of legal wholesale cannabis to the licensed retailers. In Canada, the liquor control boards are, as I said, provincial and have pretty different rules in every province, even different drinking ages. So now several provinces will have different cannabis consumption ages. See, since the Cannabis Act was introduced, the boards have basically taken their liquor models and more or less created mirror copies of them for weed. That's why British Columbia, which has a mix of private and government-run liquor stores, is currently leaning towards a similar mix of public-private dispensaries. Same with Alberta. An already established fully private liquor store system there meant that they're currently working towards an all-private retail cannabis dispensary system. Meanwhile, Ontario, Canada's most populous province, there's a provincial government that still to this day runs almost 100% government-run liquor stores and wants to have only government-run dispensaries. So that's putting Ontario in the running for the worst setup thus far. As a former regulator who worked for one of these boards, I feel strongly about this subject. Government-run sales of sin items like gambling or liquor or cannabis are a bad idea. Privatize. Always push to privatize. But I digress. That's a rant for my off-topic channel. Anyway, conservative Alberta, interestingly, ended up with the best provincial control setup in Canada. That's been revealed as of the date of this video. British Columbia will catch up in time, though, I expect, just due to the grassroots strength of the cannabis industry lobbying forces here. Okay, now that you know all your regulators, it's time to find strength in numbers. So next, check if there's a cannabis business association in your area that you can join. This can be a valuable network for legal information, lobbying, marketing, and prospective clients. Usually there will be one such association where you live, even if it's real simple, like a Facebook group. If there isn't one in your area, maybe be the one to start it. It's barely a secret that when an association representing many businesses writes an email to a regulator, it has way better odds of success than when one business is emailing by themselves. By the time you're done reading the Act, contacting your municipality, getting familiar with your territorial regulatory agency, and finding an association, you should have an idea of the tasks at hand to get your business up and legal. Next, I have some words of advice for those of you who are more creative than others, those who may have business ideas that are so unique and gray that they're not properly covered by the laws. This is normal, by the way. It happens a lot even today in the world of liquor policy. For example, you may come up with a business where you do limo tours from dispensary to dispensary, or from a commercial grow to a commercial grow, and the tour includes some weed sampling at each location, kind of like a winery tour. Or you may want a business where you don't commercially produce concentrates, but you do instruct people on how to produce them on an industrial scale. Teach proper use of extractors and so on. These are examples of peripheral type companies where the person running the business might be like, wow, this doesn't really fit well in the normal definitions, but I haven't seen a rule against it, but it's definitely cannabis related. Can I do this? My advice is do it, and do it with the minimum regulatory oversight. Meaning, get a basic local business license to make sure it's okay with your municipality, but don't start phoning around to higher level regulators or agencies trying to get permission for your unique idea. In my experience, when someone has an unusual idea and regulators run into the business already successfully operating for a year, they often will try to accommodate it and make it work, so to speak, within the rules. Sometimes they even give it a one-off permission, but if you present them with a theoretical idea for the same business, they just bullshit, bend one of their existing rules to fit, and tell you it's not allowed. Basically because they don't know what to tell you, and they don't want to deal with the new thing that you invented but haven't opened up yet. It's in their nature as regulators to be conservative in this way. And what if they run into your already operating business and still don't want to approve your new and wacky idea? Appeal. You always have the right to appeal to the highest authority at the regulator, and you'd be shocked at your odds of getting somewhere as you head up the ranks. Usually you don't even need to hire a lawyer for this process. Many people represent themselves and do so quite competently. And if your appeal fails, well, usually there's no great monetary penalties other than being told you can't operate anymore, which means you're back to where you would have started. So that's my 2 cents on dealing with regulators as a new cannabis business in this new industry. And don't let the regulation get to you. When liquor prohibition ended in Canada in the 1920s, the rules were crazy. Way crazier than today, and yes, they were different in every single province. You could just barely buy liquor in some places, so I expect improvement over time with cannabis. Government just works a certain way, unfortunately. If you've stuck around this far into the video, probably you have at least an interest in pursuing a cannabis business idea seriously, and if so, I hope you subscribe to a channel like this to stay informed on the industry. Hit that like button if this was useful, and also check out my 420 Club right here, because I do provide consulting services for businesses. We'll see you next time on Lex's World.